The original 2004 Star Wars Battlefront is a title many remember fondly. While you might have originally picked it up, either just because of the franchise it's a part of, or because it seemed like a novel thing to try at the time, surely if you're watching this video, it's because Battlefront 1 left an impression on you. And not without good reason to either. It is simply a fun game, and one that's still being enjoyed by plenty of people, even now 2 decades, a couple spin-offs, a sequel, and a whole franchise reboot later. And I want to make the case that the reason the original Battlefront has lasted so long isn't just because of the brand name it's attached to, or the story, or the nostalgia factor alone, but specifically because as a team-based shooter, it shows off some of the best map design in gaming, period. So please join me as I briefly break down what makes each of the original Star Wars Battlefront's maps so good. I wanted to start this series off where else but the map and I suspect many others, would consider the best in the game. Tatooine, Dune Sea. And, I would argue, Dune Sea's excellence starts with how its very layout caters to practically every type of gameplay offered in Battlefront. No matter what map you're on, or what faction you're fighting for, in Battlefront you do have to essentially always choose to play as either a general infantry unit, a long-range sniper, a vehicle driving specialist, or an anti-vehicle explosive weapons specialist. You do get some faction-specific special classes, but you are generally filling one of 4 given roles at any given time. And how useful each of these roles is will typically vary from map to map. Some environments become a meat grinder for the infantry classes, some maps really lack the openness to get the most out of marksmen, and some maps have very few vehicles, if any. But Dune Sea, almost uniquely, offers an opportunity for every class in the game to contribute to their team meaningfully. And, within a single match on this map, you can see every playstyle going on somewhere. The flat flank running around the map's border gives your basic infantry plenty of space to run around in and try to attack the enemy directly, while at the same time there's a fair amount of map geometry in the form of rocky outcrops and large pieces of debris to give your soldiers a decent amount of cover and to encourage tactical positioning rather than just solely taking potshots at one another from the draw distance away. Since this is a relatively large and outdoors map, there's decent sniper sightlines around too, so they're not left out of the fun either. Additionally, the presence of a large climbable stone arch just off the centre of the map means you get an opportunity to play around with using elevation to your advantage. You can either get on top of it, potentially helping you spot targets at the cost of making yourself more visible, or you can try to stay directly under it, thereby making it a lot harder for enemies to sneak up on you, but the trade-off there being that you're confining yourself to a smaller area. It's also worth pointing out that even though this map is set in a relatively flat, open desert plain, the map designers did make sure to not let the snipers get too overpowered. Case in point, the giant column-like monoliths dotting the inner portion of the map. They stop long-range classes from being able to see and kill across the entire battlefield, lest they be the only thing anyone plays on this level. That being said, it's also not entirely out of the question that as a sniper, you commandeer one of your team's flying vehicles and take it up to the top of one of those columns, get out and start aiming for the very tops of people's heads from up there. Just be aware that if your transport gets destroyed while you're up there isn't exactly an easy way down. But, while we're on the topic, you also wouldn't be giving Dune Sea its dues if you didn't note how many vehicles the map gives you. Each playable team has starfighters you can use to either do strafing runs on the enemy with, or you can even have a go at a spot of aerial dogfighting against the other team's pilots. And you've also got the biggest selection of ground vehicles in one map here. There's speeder bikes for traversing the landscape at top speed in, transport barges for rolling out with your whole squad, assault walkers for when you get tired of the whole infantry back and forth, and hover tanks that you can get some truly disgusting kill streaks with if you're sweaty enough about it. It gives you a lot of different ways to go about attacking the enemy, and it gives both your fusion cutter toting technicians and your RPG demolition men something to focus on that's right up both their alleys. The sheer variety of gameplay styles that emerge on Dune Sea that I've mentioned already make it a 10 out of 10 in my books. But I still haven't mentioned two of the map's most iconic and unique features. Right in the middle of the map is a great big Sarlacc tentacle pit, and it'll snatch up any unit which wanders too close, killing them instantly. It's a simple enough concept, and a pretty straightforward way to incorporate one of the most iconic creatures from the films into the game. But I also appreciate what the presence of a big invincible threat to every player right in the middle of the map does for the gameplay itself. It makes the open basin in the center of the environment a much more dynamic space to try and navigate, as you're potentially fighting enemies off from all sides. It's a whole new hazard that will keep you on your toes, and at the same time, the fact that the developers dressed it up and made it this tentacle monster from the movies means that even though it's just an immobile insta-kill on anyone who gets too close, it's still a lot more visually interesting than if it was just a big hole in the ground or something. But that's not all. I've saved perhaps the single best element of this map for last, the presence of the Tusken Raiders. Because Dune Sea isn't just rebels versus Imperials or droids versus clones, there's a whole third faction in play here. Whenever you start a match on Tatooine Dune Sea, 2 of the map's 6 control points will each be owned by a different team. There's other maps in the original Battlefront that have planet-specific NPCs, Wookiees, Jawas, Gamorreans, the list goes on, and you encounter plenty of unique units, both enemy and ally, in the campaign. However, Dune Sea is the only map in the game with an entire dedicated third faction with its own control points and everything that is decidedly hostile to everyone else present. And it's quite possibly those Tuskens on this map that many people regard as the single coolest feature of the original Battlefront. And they're no pushovers either. Starting from their little hilltop encampment off to the side of the battlefield, they can start taking control of a lot of the map if you let them. On Dune Sea alone, it is entirely possible for both quote-unquote real teams to lose to those guys. And it seems fitting that it would be the open-air Tatooine map that would have this unique feature too. Tatooine is inarguably one of the most iconic and recognizable settings from the Star Wars films, and the designers went above and beyond here to pack as much recognizable scenery in as possible. You've got the underground-style homestead house, a giant derelict sand crawler, moisture farming tanks, all that. What's great about features like these isn't just that it makes the setting feel more authentic, but even just from a gameplay perspective, it helps in ways you might not have even consciously thought about before. No matter where you are on this map, if you get disoriented, within seconds of looking around, there's so many unique details that you can figure out exactly where you are instantly. And beyond that, even if you just look up into the sky or off into the distance, you'll often see some neat little details like massive capital ships flying overhead. And details like that, I feel, speak to one of Battlefront's strengths, specifically as a bit of tie-in media. Because the Dune Sea map isn't actually replicating any one specific location from the movies. Instead, it's recreating a general tone, an atmosphere. It's reassembling a bunch of familiar details in a new way that makes for a map layout that feels true to the Star Wars setting, while also, crucially, being a perfectly designed gameplay environment for the game it's a part of. It's the unity of theme and function in maps that makes games like Battlefront stand out. And I would argue, Dune Sea in particular, is the pinnacle of this game. That being said, Dune Sea is far from the only fantastic environment in this game. And if you might like to hear me break down what makes other Battlefront maps so good, there will be a Battlefront map analysis playlist linked at the top of the description. Or you can subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for the next video. Either way, goodbye for now, and have a lovely day.